Good evening. Londoners woke up to a blanket of snow and a commute from hell this morning. Tubes and trains were delayed and cancelled. Runways were closed at most of our airports. Drivers spent more than 7 hours sat on the M25. Parts of the capital saw more snow than we've had for almost a decade. But one thing was clear, our transport network was not prepared. Simon Harris reports.
For a smart motorway, it wasn't a smart look. In Hertfordshire and Essex, parts of the M25 looked like a cross between a car park and a skating rink. Drivers found themselves stuck for several hours after jackknife lorries blocked the carriageway.
It's quite a scary situation. It's obviously very cold out, so there's no indication of when this is going to be clearing.
There was more gridlock on the M11, where motorists faced the challenge of trying to keep warm without running out of fuel. By this morning, it was the turn of another part of the transport network to fall down. For thousands of commuters, the snow brought an unwelcome early taste of the chaos to come during this week's rail strikes. On both the main line and the underground, trains were cancelled or delayed as points froze, signals failed and drivers were unable to get to their depots. Richard turned up at Elstree and Borehamwood, hoping to get his children Charlotte and Leo back to their home in East London.
Been trying since 7 and every time we look there is a train, then it's delayed, cancelled. So hopefully we're going to try and get on the next one.
Looks like the app was completely wrong. There may be a train in 20-30 minutes potentially, but it's looking bleak.
Were you surprised that there was so much disruption?
No, because we're used to it.
It's now been told that the live updates on the phone app is wrong and that the only true updates are what's on the board, and there's no trains going into the city at the moment, which is really frustrating.
One train company, South Eastern, pleaded with passengers to stay at home. But why couldn't the railways cope?
Unfortunately, what's exacerbated the situation a little bit today is that we received a very late forecast of the level of snow that we'd receive. And what that meant is we had less time to prepare than what we normally would.
Currently, there are no city-bound trains from this station.
At Earl's Court, at the height of the rush hour, there were no District Line trains to the city, forcing frustrated commuters to overload the Piccadilly line. Passengers faced long waits on chilly platforms as the Underground struggled.
We're not like a Scandinavian country that keeps huge amounts of resources in the background to make sure that everything is constantly checked and there are huge amounts of people to do all the work. We obviously take a proportionate approach for the amount of snow that we get. We don't have these events very often.
In Hertfordshire, school closures meant parents as well as commuters coming up with a plan B.
It is a bit frustrating. I'm lucky that I've been able to switch my work days this week, but I know a lot of people can't, and it's been really hard.
Some Londoners found their own way around the travel disruption. Whee! But this first snow of winter seemed to take almost everyone by surprise. Simon Harris, ITV News, Hertfordshire.
Well done.
More than 40,000 rail workers walked out this morning as a month of travel disruption began. It's the first of a series of 48-hour strikes between now and early January. Trains ran on a reduced service. In some places, there were no trains at all. On top of that, there was the fallout from yesterday's snow. It's not a great week for commuters, as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
There are ways to beat the strike. In Richmond, commuters can usually rely on London Underground and London Overground. But in the middle of this morning's rush hour, even that option was shut down by an ill-timed signal failure. Suddenly, there were no trains at all.
We were told the tubes were working and the Overground wasn't, but it's life. We have to get on with it.
My whole travel's taken me about 2.5 hours altogether, when normally it takes me an hour. So I've made myself late for work and there's nothing I can do about it, really.
I've got as far as Richmond Station and now I can't go anywhere else.
People can't get to work, it's stressful. No, it's just not fair.
The train companies managed to run a limited service on some lines, but starting later in the morning and finishing early evening. The RMT has rejected pay rises from the train companies and Network Rail of between 8 and 9%, but it's not the only sticking point. This is a dispute about pay and working practices. The government argues there isn't a bottomless pit of taxpayers' money to fund higher wages unless the railways modernise, and that means staff must accept new ways of doing things. That includes more driver-only trains, a programme of widespread ticket office closures and smaller maintenance teams looking after the tracks.
20% of rail passengers haven't returned to the railways, 40% of commuters haven't returned to the railways. The railways aren't financially sustainable without a significant amount of reform to go along with a fair pay deal for the workers.
But the RMT says the proposed reforms will mean a less safe railway and more antisocial hours for its members.
At the moment, the recipe that they've put together is not acceptable to our people, so we need some positive change in that, which we think is achievable fairly quickly, actually, and if we can get an improvement in that, we're prepared to put that to our people in a vote.
At the Soho Theatre, it's opening night tomorrow of a new production of As You Like It. Producers and impresarios fear the drama of rail strikes will see audiences staying at home as the strikes drag on.
We've all of us had a very tough time during COVID, and we're in a recovery period now, and we have as an industry recovered well, but it's definitely a setback, and there's no other way of putting it than that.
Working from home has taken some of the sting out of rail strikes, but for those forced to commute, there were long cold waits for buses and long queues of traffic on the roads. And today was only the beginning of a wave of walkouts by rail workers in the run-up to Christmas and in the new year. Simon Harris, ITV News, Wimbledon.
Families living in a tower block in Edmonton have been forced to use outdoor showers during sub-zero temperatures after the gas supply was shut off. People living in Cheshire House have been without hot water and central heating since a gas leak on the 28th of November. And one resident told our correspondent Simon Harris her 9-month-old son was admitted to hospital.
Cheshire House is an unremarkable London high-rise, much like any other, but with one difference. Parked in the frozen snow a few yards from the front door of this Edmonton tower block is a trailer with 7 showers.
It's outrageous. Look at the snow on the ground. They expect us to shower, wash my children in there.
Emma and her 2 children live on the 15th floor and have had no hot water or central heating for more than 2 weeks.
It's freezing. We're having to wear dressing gowns, woolly jumpers, socks, just to keep warm because we're only allowed to have the one heater.
Emma has a chest infection. Her son Hudson has picked up a virus and her daughter Avery has had a bowel condition since she was born.
Sometimes she will have an accident because she's on so many laxatives. Her body relaxes when she's asleep. So when she wakes up, I can't even wash her properly unless I take her downstairs to the showers that are in the street in -degree weather.
The gas supply to Cheshire House was cut off after a leak. Experts warned an explosion could cause the tower block to collapse because of the way it's built. Enfield Council has given each flat a small fan heater and is now installing electric boilers, but the work is taking weeks. It's freezing cold at the foot of Cheshire House, and it's hard to imagine just how grim it would be trying to take a shower in these temperatures. Richard decided to brave the elements and give it a go. He didn't last long.
Today I need to try the shower. I'm no shower because too much cold inside, outside.
Too cold for you to have a shower?
Of course.
Enfield Council says residents can use free showers at a leisure centre about a mile away. In a statement, the council said, for those residents who have chosen to remain at Cheshire House, we have provided heaters and blankets, but appreciate the current conditions are very difficult.
It's terrible. I've had no heating, no hot water, no electric right now.
My bedroom is damp. My boys' room is damp. The council doesn't do anything.
My son has asthma problem. My daughter had a heart surgery when she's small, but the other one has start asthma symptoms.
Emma says the council offered her a hotel room, but in Ilford, almost 10 miles away, and she didn't want to abandon her cats and dogs. What's Christmas going to be like?
Hell, it's ruined. Christmas is ruined.
Tonight, Enfield Council said it was working around the clock to fit the new boilers. Simon Harris, ITV News, Edmonton.
Good evening. It is the biggest strike in the history of the NHS. From St Thomas's to Great Ormond Street, St Mary's to the Royal Marsden, thousands of nurses from 5 NHS trusts in the capital walked out today. They want a 19% pay rise. The government says that is just unaffordable. With the two sides at a standoff, more strikes are likely, and it's patients who will feel the impact most. Long-waited for operations and appointments have been cancelled, only lengthening already record waiting lists. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has more.
A cold morning in West London and Jodie was up before dawn. As a nurse, she's used to this, but today Jodie was heading not for the warmth of a ward, but a chilly picket line.
We don't want to come out on strike today. It's a position that we feel pushed into. We just want someone to come to the table and negotiate with us.
Outside St Thomas's Hospital, it was perishing on the picket line, but moving in time to the beat of a drum helped warm things up. Kathy Latt, a community matron, and Monica, who works in radiology, were making history. This was the first strike by members of the Royal College of Nursing in more than a century. Does it feel wrong to be out here on a picket line?
In a way, yes. Like, in a way, I felt, well, should I be here or should I ask for the fair pay? Or, because I am a nurse, I should be with the patient.
What does it feel like to be on strike?
Oh, I feel sad. I really feel sad. Why? Because my patients are waiting for me. I'm supposed to be there looking after them. But they understand.
Do you feel guilty?
Not totally. Not totally, because I've got my area covered.
At Cheshunt in Hertfordshire, the strike forced the closure of a minor injuries unit. Notices were posted advising patients what to do.
For minor injuries, 111 online is the best option, or your GP or community pharmacist. If anybody needs emergency assistance, all EDs are open and working today, so please call 999 and you will be dealt with accordingly.
The union has allowed nurses involved in life-saving care to exempt themselves from the strike. So accident and emergency departments, intensive care units and treatments like chemotherapy and dialysis should operate as normal. The government has offered nurses a pay rise of 4.3%, but the RCN wants 19%. That's inflation plus 5%.
We speak every day to members in London and across England who are leaving nursing because the salary isn't enough to support them, living and working in one of the most expensive cities in the world, and it's not encouraging people to remain in the profession for long enough.
The Health Secretary was at Chelsea and Westminster Hospital.
Asking for a 19% pay rise, way above what most viewers themselves are receiving, is not affordable given the many other economic pressures that we face.
Across London, thousands of outpatient appointments and non-emergency operations are likely to have been cancelled today. NHS England says it won't know the full impact of the strike until after it ends tonight.
Simon, the two sides look really far apart. What can we expect in the next couple of weeks then?
Well, this was the first strike in this dispute, and you wouldn't expect either side to give in after less than a day. And as it stands now, the RCN is planning another strike next week and says it'll call more in 2023 if necessary. Now, while the RCN says there is no risk posed by these strikes to life-saving healthcare, there is, as you said earlier, a real issue for the NHS about the growing backlog of operations and other treatments. The NHS is already creaking under the weight of postponed appointments because of COVID, and this is only going to make waiting lists even longer. But the government is adamant that the pay offer has come from an independent pay review body, and anyway, there isn't any more money. The RCN says 4.3% simply isn't enough, especially with double-digit inflation. And if you're going to recruit more staff, you can't have these poor salaries, and the NHS is frankly hemorrhaging staff.
Yeah, OK. Simon, thank you very much.